Okay, so in today's video we're going to talk about how to get some sneaky extra distance, or if you like, the big difference between how pros hit the ball and how amateurs generally hit the golf ball. Now, we're going to be focusing very much on the sort of downswing and the hitting area, and I'm also going to share with you just the sort of drill / exercise so that you can kind of get a decent feeling for exactly what it is that you're trying to do. To sort of skim over it, basically what happens with a professional golfer is, one, obviously they would demonstrate a very competent backswing position, but as they initiate coming in towards the downswing, what they do is the pelvis will drop, so they'll sort of lower in towards it, and they'll really sort of utilize that lead leg. So they'll sort of, if you like, sort of turn the pelvis into the leg on this sort of lead side, so they're shifting a decent amount of weight pressure on this foot. Now, simultaneously, whilst they're doing that, they're able to keep the head pretty still. Now, what I mean is that your general amateur will sort of do this. They'll sort of turn over the leg and the head starts to move in front of the ball, and that's what brings this sort of right hip and right shoulder into play and gives you those sort of over the top tendencies. So that's a big difference between pros and AMs, and that's been really well documented on from a, shall we say, biomechanical sense now over the last sort of few years. So you want to get out of that habit. Now, for our pro, just coming back, because they lower and they move the weight towards the lead leg, then what they can do is, as they come to hit the ball, they can push up. And as they actually push up, then you can extend your arms through the hitting zone. So, you know, when you see a pro, they're sort of moving back away from it as they extend their arms. The problem for most amateurs is, because you move this way, you sort of have to carry on chasing it. And then the problem is, if you imagine any other sort of speed movement, you know, throwing a punch or hitting a tennis shot or any sort of extension, you'll always tend to find that your body will move in the opposite direction to help you gather that more momentum. So it's a really big thing, and it's something that you really want to learn. Now, the question is, though, is not so much that, because obviously I think that's still open too much to interpretation. I don't want most amateurs just sort of going, oh, I'm going to drop down, because I've seen golfers do that when they reach out for help, and it just doesn't generally work. It just becomes a little bit of a failure. So what I try to do is try to give golfers the feeling of what you're after. So if I just hit a couple of shots here for a moment, I just hit a couple of shots quite slowly, so back, and then as I start the downswing here, and then there, okay? So I'll just try and hit a couple like that just so you guys can see. So I'd swing back, as I transition I move like so, and then I can move back and out the way. Now I can feel, if I do it a little bit more seamlessly now, I can feel that motion into my leg and that motion in the hit. So that's one of the things that I always work with a lot of my students. Now, the best way to get the feeling of how to turn the pelvis correctly and not sort of chase around like so is to put your lead foot considerably in front of your trail foot. So if I stand like this, okay, so if I put my feet together and then stand like so, and then I just put the club across my shoulder region, and all I'm going to do is I'm just trying to keep my head still, and see the way I'm just rotating and I'm turning my pelvis into my leg like so. Now this is just helping me get the feeling of getting that weight towards that lead side, and then I can advance that stance a little bit, then I can narrow it up, and all I'm doing is I'm just trying to teach all my students how to turn into the leg, and then I can get that feeling of lowering and really gathering that weight pressure, and that's a really good way to load in towards that leg. Because if you don't get that, you can't do that. Do you see what I mean? If you do this, you're not going to be able to do that when you hit it. It just won't work. So you really need to gain that extra bit of distance. What you need to do is you need to learn how to use the ground. But what you really need to do to learn how to use the ground is you need to learn how to use your lead leg, in my opinion. And that's why I like to see amateur golfers keep it nice and flexed. Feel like you're really turning that pelvis into that lead leg whilst keeping your head still. That will give you that ability to lower in towards it, and then obviously I would say more naturally you'll be able to extend back up and out of the shot. So with students of mine, I would tend to get them to do different exercises. One of the things that I would encourage them to generally use is like a foot wedge. Now, my foot wedge I haven't got with me, but what I do have is the equivalent of the ultimate foot wedge. And all I mean by a foot wedge is just a raised platform. So if I use my orange peel board just for a moment and focus again on this lead foot, the benefit of practicing with a foot wedge is, one, it elevates the leg up in the air, so again it retains flexion, and also it sort of pronates the foot, so it gives you a platform to push into. And what I'm trying to get you to do is this type of motion, you know, not sort of this type of movement. This, turning into the leg, using that, and then you can push off, in, off, in, off. And that's kind of what you want to do, especially if you feel like you're lacking distance. I meet a lot of golfers that sort of lack distance, and all they try and do is they try and throw rotational movement on it. They just try and turn more. But the problem is you're not going to be able to generate any more speed. You've got to go boom, 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 boom. So is this something that we can carry on talking about? Of course we can. If any of you are interested, then you're more than welcome to come and join the online academy as well. But for now, practice this lead leg in front of that one. Get used to turning into it. And it's a great drill on its own. As I said before, put that lead leg in front, start turning into it, and then you'll start to feel that push off. And then you can break it down similar to what I did earlier as well, where you sort of get used to practicing transition and then push out of the way. See you guys again really soon.